I'm Tashay with Nerd Alert News, and today we're diving deeper into the mind behind House of Abraham. We've already talked with director Lisa Belcher, and now we're joined by the man who helped bring the story from life to the ground up. Writer and star Lukas Hassel, from crafting the film's layered narrative to stepping into the role of Abraham himself, he plays a huge part in what makes this psychological thriller so compelling. Lukas, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the kind words about our movie. It's so interesting on an indie level to try to get your movie out there, competing with all the big studios. So, thank you to people like yourself who are willing to take on the indie cinema and help us out there.
Oh, absolutely. We love it. So I want to jump in here with the origin of all this. What inspired the concept behind House of Abraham, and where did the initial idea come from?
So it comes back to you already. I know you had Lisa Belcher on your podcast already, and so this might have been covered a little bit with her, but we basically met up at various film festivals with films of our own. I'm also a filmmaker myself, and we kept sort of appreciating each other's work, and eventually did a short film together called Guest of Honor that I ended up sort of co-writing, and we acted in it together and so forth. And so Lisa called me up and said, "Listen, I think we work well together. Let's try to make a feature together," because we both talked about that that's sort of the next step after doing shorts. And she had a little bit of money in the bank. And so it was going to be this tiny little project between me and her. And we were both going to sort of act in it, and we were going to maybe co-direct it and so forth. And then the name of the game then becomes like, how do you write something that you haven't seen a million times before that doesn't, break the bank? Often that means sort of a one house location type of thing. And of course, horror is near and dear to my heart because as an actor, that's where I sort of tend to work and get my bread and butter. And I love the creatives within that community. And so I knew that it was probably going to be in the sort of the horror thriller genre. But again, didn't want to come up with this thing of just like people arriving at a house and getting killed off one by one, which we've all seen many, many times. Sometimes wonderfully done, sometimes less so, and that's just the name of the game. So I thought two things then. One, like the heady aspect of it was like, how can we create something in that world that we hadn't seen before? But the heart part of it, which is probably to what you mean by your question, what inspired it, it was just this notion of sort of what I see around me today in the US without getting political about it, but I see a lot of sort of people being manipulated by others that have maybe more power, more money, more education, perhaps, and they get manipulated into this situation where, without realizing, they sort of do things against their own interests. So when people see the film, that may not be evident to them, but that was what inspired me to come up with this concept, which is set in the world of House of Abraham and under the world of unaliving and sort of people coming to suicide potentially at this house. But at the heart of it, it's really an exploration of manipulation. Be careful who you trust when you're at your most vulnerable. And that is fascinating to me. So that's essentially where it came from.
Nice. I like that. And you mentioned, the heavy themes that are in this movie. I mean, they're very complex. And I mean, there's a fine line between doing them right and then honestly pissing people off.
100%, but that's also part of it. I think, when we come from the indie film world where it's so hard to get traction, my philosophy as a writer, as a filmmaker, is don't write or do something that Hollywood would do because they would do it better and bigger with more money, bigger stars, bigger everything. So your best shot as an independent filmmaker is swing for the fences, take a risk, do something a little outside of the box that they would never touch. And I think the reason House of Abraham has done so well in the indie film market is because it's different. And so I'm not afraid of asking the difficult questions. I think it's important that we talk about difficult subject matters, whether it be death or whether it be whatever it is. I think keeping things under the rug is not helpful. And sometimes we can demystify a lot of these taboos if we just talk about them.
Exactly. And I think that's a big thing about what makes this so compelling. But as you were writing, how did you approach writing about all that in a way that feels both grounded and authentic?
Well, my main thing was I didn't want it to feel exploitative. I didn't want it to feel like I was just using this notion of unaliving for the sake of getting a lot of eyes on it. That was never my intent. As I said, it really was to explore the notion of manipulation, and then that just fell into that sort of type premise. So I did my research. I did my research. My husband is a psychiatrist as well. Uh, Not as well. I'm not a psychiatrist, but he's a psychiatrist in the way that he's also interested in human nature. Him from a more perhaps medical perspective, and me from a more sort of artistic perspective. So he's always been a great soundboard in all of my writing, and with this one, it came in handy in particular that I could sort of throw some questions at him about psychology and what people might be doing, and so I just did a ton of research about that essentially. And then I am originally from Denmark, where you have versions of assisted suicide.
Right.
And so I knew that the whole subject matter is very layered and it's complex and it's emotional for many people. So I fully understand why there is so much um, sort of pros and cons about this particular subject matter. So I was just very cautious of making sure that I didn't want the script to feel that I abused that subject matter just for my own sake of getting a film made. So
Right.
it was really always about character-driven stories, making sure that it was grounded in real characters, and then mix that in with what I find the most horrifying, which is what human beings are sort of able to do to one another. People sometimes lean into supernatural or lean into monster movies in the horror genre, but I sometimes think that the human nature is the biggest monster of all.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it was a supernatural line where Dean Winchester says, "Demons I get, but people are crazy."
Right.
And I mean, that's exactly it.
That's exactly it. And Abraham was written in such a way that although once you see the film, you realize he's a villain for sure, but he's treading lightly about that because some of the things that he comes out with, even if it's outrageous, there may be some truth to what he's saying, right? One of
Exactly.
the lines in the movie is like, you got life without asking for it. You can give it back, right? Which is a super weird and harsh thing to say, but it's also true. Life is not for everyone, which is the sort of the tagline of the movie, also incredibly harsh, but has echoes of truth to it. So I wanted to make sure that every character in this film had layers to it. I didn't want to make just a flat out villain or just a flat out goody two shoe. And I think, between getting wonderful Natasha Henstridge on board to play the lead character of
She
Dee
is
and
wonderful.
incredibly talented woman and probably has the hardest part in the film because she has to walk a fine line about what she knows and what the audience can't know and what they
Right.
don't know. And so I think her role is probably the trickiest, and she's such a grounded, charismatic actress that we were just incredibly fortunate to get her to be in this film. And then Lynn Shay, of course, as Beatrice. Legendary Lynn Shay raises, anything I had written on the
Oh,
page.
I know she is one of my favorites.
I mean, mine too. She's such a legend, and she's one of those people who just, took whatever I had on the page and then elevated it into something else. And like I call her a racehorse, where she comes in with so many ideas and so much power, and it's a matter of sort of harnessing that until it's right to just let it go and let her free flag fly, so to speak, because she has a lot of ideas. And of course, tone is very important. I didn't want
Hmm.
it to veer into comedy. I didn't want it to veer into spoof. I wanted it to be very grounded. And so I discussed that with Lisa a lot, and she understood exactly what the vision of this film was. So with all these people coming together under the guidance of Lisa and the script itself, it was a real treat.
That's amazing. So you've mentioned how, you reveal the characters and layers and everything like that, which is beautifully done.
Thank
And,
you.
actually, one of my favorite things about this whole film is how the story unfolds. From the very beginning, it's kind of like you're defusing a bomb, and then you clip the wrong wire and everything hits the fan, like incredibly, from the twist to everything.
That's a great way of putting it. Awesome.
Was that structure always part of the plan, or did it evolve during your writing process?
No, that was always part of the plan. For me, sometimes when I go to film festivals or film screenings, sometimes I feel the scripts are not quite, they're sort of shot almost too soon. I feel like they could have put a little more work into the script of how things are structured. They sort of go for the kills or they go for the effects and so forth. And I am just a character kind of guy. I feel like if you haven't built up your characters well enough, then nothing is going to be scary or hit with you emotionally. You can throw
Right.
anything you want at the screen and it'll just be cool to look at. There's a rolling head or there's an explosion of this. But if you haven't grounded it in good character work, then you really have nothing. And so I wanted to take my time in Act One to build up that sort of slow burn. Of course, the risk is always with the new generation and so forth. They're used to that kind of pacing, and that's just not really for me. So I wanted to make sure I laid the groundwork properly in Act One, with hints of mystery and hints of suspense that keeps people hopefully leaning forward until we sort of hit early act two, when, as you say, the wrong wire gets clipped, and then everything sort of unwinds from there, and it becomes a whole different bag of bones for the second half. And I just love that structure myself, and I'm always writing with ideas of, as an audience member, how can I keep people leaning forward? I don't want to spoon feed things. I want people to sort of go, wait a second, oh, that's how that fit together. At some of the screenings, we've had a lot of people saying, oh, I wish I knew more about Beatrice. And I get it, but as a writer, you have to sort of make your decisions
Exactly.
how much time you spend on other characters when you really want to make sure that the trunk of the film is in order. And so I just gave little hints of my history with Beatrice, with Lin Shaye's character, and for me that's plenty because then you can sort of start imagining what
Right.
that
I
might
mean,
have
I
been
think
like.
that was perfect. I mean, the one scene with them where she shows the tattoo on her arm. I mean, that's perfect.
Right, right. It's like for me, that's the kind of stuff I'm like, oh, wait, she came as a client originally and then she stayed.
Yeah.
So there's all this stuff we don't know, but we realize we don't know that, but they're here now. So something must have happened between now and then, and it's up to you to sort of guess what that might be.
Exactly. So, I mean, in the film, there's a lot of little details, a lot of which I didn't even catch until like my second watch around. Like, I mean, the daisies that you don't realize are everywhere. I mean, Abraham's whiskey, Alex correcting his name on the sign-in sheet. It's just all these little details that are leading you without you even realizing it. How, I mean, obviously they were intentional, but how did you translate that from the page to the screen?
Well, so this is where sort of collaboration comes in with Lisa Belcher and myself, right? So once I pitched this idea to her, and once I wrote the script, and it was probably my fastest script I've written because I knew once I hit the sort of what the movie was going to be, it came pretty easily to me. It was just a matter of honing the script and maybe getting rid of a character or two from the original first draft. But then Lisa has a great ear and a great eye for many things. So she and I could sort of bounce things back and forth. And she would go, what about this? I don't quite understand. And so I realized, oh, okay, so that's not clear enough. I could go back and make sure that those breadcrumbs have been put in appropriately. And because this film does contain twists and turns,
Oh, yeah, it does.
I'm a firm believer of you can't just put a twist in for the sake of a twist if the audience doesn't have a chance to, at least in hindsight, go, oh, right, the signs were there. It didn't come out of nowhere. I just didn't notice them. So for me,
Exactly.
it was always like about crossing those T's and dotting those I's. And so I'm happy you watched it a second time because I'm sure you saw it with a different eye then, knowing what you
Did.
never know and seeing, oh, some of those lines that this character says, now I know what that line means. But at the time, I just dismissed it. And so it was a lot of fun to create a script almost sort of in a jigsaw puzzle type of way, just to make sure that everything sort of that nothing was really left unanswered once you had sort of seen the whole film and maybe saw it a second time, things would be even clearer.
Yeah. And I love those kind of movies where it's like you watch it the first time and it's great, but the second time around you really see everything that was put into it. And I think those are just the most epic kind of films because you can see all the work and all the thought that went into it.
I really appreciate that. And it just, again, it shows the importance of taking your time writing a script like that, because without that work in writing what I think ended up being with a pretty tight sort of script, and I write with editing in mind already, that becomes a good read for people like Lin Shaye and people like Natasha Henstridge, who both, when they read it, said they couldn't put it down. And that's how we got them to commit to the film, right? So it's all about if you can get if you spend enough time on a good script, your chances of securing big talent is much, much higher. So
Hmm.
never rush that process, in other words.
Okay, so let's get into Abraham because you love to hate him. You love to
Right,
hate this guy.
right, right.
I mean, to put it mildly, he's very complex, like the rest of the whole movie. He
Yes.
walks that very fine line between this like calm reassurance, but you can tell there is something sinister just brewing.
Yes.
How did you approach getting into that mindset, both as the writer and the actor?
Well, it sort of comes from this thing that like a lot of my bread and butter as an actor is in horror. And I've worked with amazing creatives like Jeremiah Kipp in Slapface. I play the monster in that movie. I've worked with Rolf Skonevsky in some of his horror movies, The Black Room and Art of the Dead. And so I've learned a lot from these masters of the genre, so to speak. And I just find when villains work the best for me, it's when they're grounded and layered. If they're just one note from beginning to end, I just switch off and I get a little bored and I'm just assuming they're, just a complete psychopath with no redeeming features. And so Abraham in this case has to have some sort of charm. Otherwise, he's not going to be able to yield that great ability of manipulation that he has.
Right.
And I think, a calm demeanor. If you sometimes when I go to the supermarket, I get called. Occasionally, I get called Jesus. Occasionally, I get called Neptune or sort of Zeus or something. So I know I have these sort of deity qualities with this big hair and my beard and so forth. And I think in a semi-cult leader like Abraham, that's a great asset because people automatically sort of put power into my hands without realizing
Hmm.
they're doing it, just because of sort of society indoctrinating them that tall males should be powerful, which is, of course, you and I hopefully know that that's nonsense, but that's still
Exactly.
what is indoctrinated in young, girls and boys from early on. And so Abraham fit that niche really well. As like this charming, decent looking leader that can sort of, on one hand, be that listening ear, but on the other hand, always have plans as to how can I get these people to do what I want them to do. Make sure they don't back out of their original commitment, because after all, that's where I get my kicks, is to see them sort of do my bidding, so to speak. So I just wanted him to be, both coming out with things that made sense and also things that were horrific once you understood what they meant.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of my favorite things about the whole Dee and Abraham dynamic is when that twist, I don't want to ruin it for anyone because
Right, no, of
it's
course.
so perfect. When that twist comes out and she kind of basically forces who he really is onto the audience. I mean, it was there the entire time, but you didn't realize how deep.
Right.
And
And
that's
it's
like, I
right.
loved
And
that.
it's such a switch because then you sort of see how he really feels about the whole thing, how he really feels about his clients, which makes
Hmm.
it harsher. So that's just it was really fun to put this character together, and because I knew I was going to play him as well, I also knew that I understood the subtext of everything. I'm a writer who lives with subtext. Saying is one thing, but what people are thinking underneath while they're saying it, I think is incredibly
Exactly.
important. I think things fall apart when people say what they think all the time. Then it's flat and one.
Hmm.
So the fact that we sensed that whatever was coming out of his mouth was not always exactly what he meant, that juxtaposition of subtext essentially, I think, is what makes people lean forward into any good movie.
Exactly. Were there any particular scenes that challenged you the most emotionally, psychologically, physically? Because I know the pool scene was incredibly intense.
The pool scene was incredibly intense, and it was one of those scenes that I knew when I got the idea for that. I knew it was a deal breaker for me if we were going to cut that scene, because at some point there was talks about cutting that scene just because it was expensive. You would have to have stuntmen, and it was going to be underwater camera and all that stuff. And it's an easy thing to be cut in an indie film when budget is an issue. And so I
Hmm.
was always adamant that without that, um, the sort of structure itself would sort of fall apart, because that it really is the scene that shoots us off into the second half
Hmm.
of the movie when everything goes crazy. And so that was just logistically a tough one to do. But I had a great I designed the cage, and Lisa had people in Austin sort of build it with that in mind, and so I knew how we could shoot that in a very effective way. Um, I think Abraham has a scene that you probably know which one I'm talking about that was very difficult to shoot. And
Yeah.
it was stressful, I think, for everybody involved, including myself. And we spent a good half day doing that over and over from different angles. And it was a lot of that was both emotional and physically really demanding. Um, and then it was just the overall thing of like, as a filmmaker, Lisa did an incredible job, and I'm so happy I did with this with her. But I wrote this, of course, knowing what I had in mind, and being on set, not being the director, of course, was a challenge because sometimes I would have figured, oh, I would have maybe done it this way or done it this way, and I sort of had to step back and let Lisa do what she does. She was and is the director of this movie, but as the writer and then as an actor in it, you sort of I had to figure out that balance of like, okay, I mean, in that way, it's no longer my movie. It's Lisa's movie to a certain extent, and
Right.
uh, and just let her do her thing. I mean, we're two different artists, and we have two different takes on things, and thankfully, most of the time they overlap, and we agree on everything. And sometimes I would have different opinions, but would sort of either I could suggest them something as if I was in the scene, I could sort of suggest some things myself, or sort of semi-guide things along. But if I wasn't in the scene, that was not my call to make.
Right.
Um, so that was probably sort of the the biggest challenge in hindsight was to just figure out how to sort of stay in my lane and not wear too many hats.
Right. But I mean, speaking of that collaboration with Lisa, how closely did you guys work in shaping the final version of Abraham on screen? And did anything change during filming?
So because Lisa and I had worked together before, we really have a sort of second hand language. Like we're very connected. We're very similar in many ways. We're both I consider are both kind and nice people, reasonable human beings. And so in that respect, I see a sister soul in Lisa in many ways. And so from me writing it and her giving some feedback here and there, we eventually got to the script that we both really, really liked. And once we sort of once we secured a good budget for this movie, we could then approach someone like Natasha to play the lead. Um, and and that just meant that Lisa wasn't going to be acting it in that sense, then Natasha was going to be acting it, and then Lisa was going to direct it. And we were just going to basically sort of be partners of sorts with Lisa at the helm. So after we shot everything, I would say Lisa and myself were very involved in the editing, both of us, mainly because I wrote the script, as I said earlier, I write with editing in mind. So I had very specific ideas as to why things were written a certain way, and that was important for me that we kept that in mind. And if anything would change from that, I just wanted to hear the reasoning for not doing it the way that I had envisioned it. So I wanted everything to be purposeful, and thankfully Lisa is the same way. And so I was very much a big part of the editing, thankfully. Lisa included me. And then once we got to the sort of the latter parts of it, which is sort of sound and music and color correction, I sort of stepped aside, and that was all Lisa on Lisa.
Love it. So, I mean, you've mentioned them throughout the whole thing. I mean, the cast in this whole movie, the chemistry is off the charts. You guys just flow together. They're all incredible. I mean, was there something specific that someone brought to the film that just completely elevated the material altogether?
Well, it's interesting because I had worked with Lynn once before, and so the role of Beatrice was written for Lynn. That was the only character that I actually wrote for Lynn, hoping she would read it because I'm friends with her. So hoping I could read it and hope she would like it. And she was the first one to come on board. So that was a real sort of check mark for us because that showed, okay, we have a valid, project here,
Right.
product that Lynn is really into. And so I was thrilled that she was on board. And then I had worked with Natasha Henstridge before on 3 or 4 different features, and also is someone that I greatly admire. And so I was able to get the script to her, and she also loved it and came on board. And so with those two people, I already have a great relationship, right? It's such a pleasure when you can work with friends on set, people that you admire on set, where you don't have egos running about, or you don't have misunderstandings that can happen so easily on sets. So that was really helpful. Myself and Natasha shared a house out in Austin, Texas, where we filmed. So every night we would drive back from set together. We would cook together. We would sit out in the patio and chat about the day, or laugh about this, or have a gin and tonic about that, and run lines for the next day, because both she and I had a lot of lines in this movie, sometimes together, sometimes separately. So we could sort of really help each other that way. And so there was just an ease with those people on set. And then, of course, Lisa basically cast everyone else. From either LA with Marvel Rex and Sean Freeland, or locally with Gary Clark or William Magnuson. And these actors all were incredible in their own rights. I feel like everyone nailed exactly what the sort of brief was, and that's all credit to Lisa, right? Because Lisa is really she's an actor's director. She loves to figure out how each actor works differently, what each actor might need, because of course, no one actor works the same way. Some people need very
Right.
little guidance, other people need a lot of hand holding. And so she innately understands where everybody sort of were in this sense, right? And uh, thankfully, A, because I'd worked with Lisa before, and B, because I'd written the character, I knew the character so well. It was really, for my character, it was more like a technical thing. If she needed me to step in here for the camera to be able to cut to that or something, it wasn't really emotional guidance as such, because I knew exactly where he was
Right.
at any given time. And so I think she's very good at figuring out what everybody needs separately, and then respects that. She doesn't have to over explain if it's not needed, or if somebody is struggling a little bit, she can take them aside and go, here we are, right? But looking back at all these performances, I mean, as I said earlier, Lynn Shay is just elevates any material she
I
comes
know.
in.
I love her
It's a
so
matter,
much.
it's just a matter of picking and choosing what makes sense for the character and what doesn't skew it to something else. And like, but watching what she did in the end, I mean, it's just she elevated that character beyond anything I could have imagined. So that's one. Natasha coming in again, just with that grounded, she needed really to ground that role, and that is a very difficult thing to do. But because
Hmm.
she's so natural on camera, she was able to both be likable and also a little mysterious at the same time. So amazing kudos to her. And every time she's on screen, I'm personally just mesmerized, because she's not
Oh,
only talented, but she's
absolutely.
so charismatic and stunning to look at. Marvel Rex came in with a
Oh, I
different,
loved him. I loved his character. I loved
his
him. He
character,
was
Alex.
amazing. Oh
He's
my
sort of,
God, I loved him so much.
for me, it's very important that if there's a trans character in something, I didn't want it to be about a trans character. Like,
Right.
Alex just happened to be trans, and then he was all these other things, right? Which is why I wrote him this way. He has all the funny lines he has a lot of little sharp lines throughout the whole thing. And I just loved how Marvel took that on. Just nailed it straight away, understood where this character was coming from, understood the layering of who this character was. And as one of his lines is, like, depression feels the same regardless of gender. That goes to the heart of the fact that we're all human and we all have different experiences, but at the heart of it, we share emotions like love and anger and all these things, regardless of what we've got going on sexually or gender wise. So,
Right.
so Marvel was just a real wonder to work with, and I've become great friends with him afterwards. So prolific as well, and he has a great future ahead of him as an actor. Gary Clark, of course, is a well-known actor from back in the day and all the West.
Hmm.
Such a gentleman, and Victor is really the heart of the story in many ways, because he's the first one to sort of protest what this house is doing and sort of urges others to not go through with it. And so he was a very crucial, brief character, but a very crucial character, and he has such a humanity to him. So he was wonderful to have on board, and I can just go on and on and on, but quick shout out to William Magnuson as well, who, stuck it out in that cage on a very difficult day in the pool and made
Oh
that
my
look
goodness.
unbelievable. And he and I were, in there. We had to heat the pool the day before, because otherwise we would have died from hypothermia, I'm sure. But so there are all these little things to go through. And he was, of course, in the cage. At least I was outside the cage, but he and I really had to connect that
Oh
entire day.
yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean that pool
yeah,
scene, that's really the first glimpse you see of the sinister side of Abraham. That smile right
right,
there at the end of that scene
right.
just seals
Yeah.
it.
It's pretty, I mean, I've had people that either had to walk out or not look at this at all. People are still writing to me that this is the one scene they can't get out of their head, which
It
is
is.
news to a writer slash filmmaker. That's exactly what I'm after. So, yay. And then just a final shout out to Sean Freeland as well, who played Pierre, who just gave that character so much menace and harshness and just did an incredible job with that character. And then of course Kaylee as Shannon is a wonderful young actress and is I'm so happy that the film turned out so well for her as well because she's so charismatic and talented.
Yes. So, what has the audience's response meant to you so far, and what do you hope people are talking about after they watch it?
Well, it's interesting because you see sort of people within the industry that I know. I've had great chats about all positive, and about the questions that the film brings up and so forth. And then you watch online, you watch reviews, you watch what people write, and you see sort of people that don't know me at all, what their responses are. And mostly, thankfully, it's been really positive. And every now and then you have someone who thinks it's like a little too slick or I mishandled the subject matter or whatever. And that's just the subject of art, right? Everything is subjective. I could be watching the same movie as somebody sitting next to me, and I could love it, and he or she could hate it. That is just depending on sort of where we're coming from. But overall, I feel like it's been a great start of discussion for many. It's brought up a lot of at all the Q&As we've been out for at film festivals or at sort of screenings when we had a limited theatrical across the country. The questions have been really inspired and really enlightening. And as I said, anything that's a little taboo that you can bring into the light to discuss, for me is all good. There's nothing that I'm not comfortable talking about, whether it pleases people or not. That's neither here nor there.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, Lucas, I could sit here and pick your brain all day. I really could. But,
Likewise,
we do have to kind of wrap
I
this up
understand.
and find the ending. But before we do, are there any works in progresses you can give us a glimpse of or give us an idea of what's next for you?
There's a few things. I mean, first of all, I just want to make sure, based on Lisa's instructions, to make sure to tell people that, of course, it's out. The film can be watched on Apple and Prime and Google TV and YouTube TV. And the Blu-ray is out and DVD is out with a commentary by myself and Lisa throughout that old school type of commentary where we chat throughout the entire movie. So if you're into listening to why things were they were and the things happen on the day, whatever, that's on the Blu-ray and there. And we have deleted scenes and outtakes on that as well. So that's available out there, either on Prime or directly on the website of houseofabrahammovie.com. Um, but then personally, I am writing something else as a filmmaker, a dark horror that I'm working with a production team now to get underway, which would be really thrilling. And I will tell you more about that when that happens. And then as an actor, there's a feature coming out. The producers behind the Terrifier trilogy,
Hmm.
they produced a new film called The Pitchfork Retreat with
Oh, I saw that trailer.
one of Tony Todd's last performances, and I'm one of the leads in that. And so that is now being sneak peeked around the film festival circuit and will come out with distribution later on this year for sure. It has Dee Wallace, Daniel Harris in it, some wonderful actors in it overall. And so I'm very excited about that. In fact, right now I'm heading out to Coney Island Film Festival where it screens this evening. And then I'm directing, I directed a short that's going around the film festival circuit right now called Up Close, a very different, almost semi-experimental short, and I'm prepping for a new short called Excursion that I'm going to shoot this fall with my great friend Dana Bledsoe in the lead. And yeah, that's going to be quite something else. I wrote the script and I'm going to direct it as well, and we'll see how that goes.
That all sounds so exciting. I can't wait to see that. And based on the Pitchfork trailer, I can't wait to see that one. That
Yay!
one looks amazing.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It fits firmly in the horror category for this one. And just having a chance to work with Tony Todd, Tony Todd, um, was such an honor. And what a gentleman, what a talent, and very honored to be able to share the screen with him in one of his last movie performances.
Yes. Well, Lucas, thank you again for taking the time to talk with us. This was such an incredible look into both the writing and the performance behind the House of Abraham. For everyone watching, if you haven't checked out the film, this is one you're definitely going to want to experience for yourself. Like Lucas said, you can find it digitally on Prime Video, Apple TV, Google Play, and YouTube. And then you can get that DVD or Blu-ray on moviesing.com. Make sure to follow Nerd Alert News for more interviews, reviews, and everything happening in the world of entertainment. I'm Tishay, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching.